Hi everybody, I'm Tim Bulot and welcome to Adventure Backcountry and WeaponsAcademy.com. So this is part 2 of our 1993 YJ alternator install. So we've got the alternator out, we've replaced it with a new one. We've gone up from a 75 amp to a 90 amp, which is still within specifications from the factory. So been doing a little research. If I go more than 90 amp, then I'm looking at having to recable, and that's something that I really don't want to get into. So 90 amps going to be fine. 15 more amps is 15 more amps, okay? So we're going to go by the install today. We're going to take you along with us. Now, for those of you who are video makers, we are filming this with JVC GY-DV500U. It's a 3 CCD, 3 half-inch CCD professional camcorder that records to mini DV tape in the DV format. Okay, so this camera was alive and well as an ENG camera in the late 90s into the 2000s. Now the YJ, there were still plenty of YJs around during that time in their original form. So it's still sticking with our tradition, but nevertheless, we've had this camera for our Training to Survive television show, and we need to use these. So we're going to be hitting some cutaways with Hi-8 with the VX-3. So let's get right into this install back in 1993. We hope you enjoy it. Okay, so we picked this up at AutoZone. It is a refab, but then again, most of your parts are these days, especially for the older vehicles. So the install, we're pretty much going to go in reverse order as we did from the removal or the disassembly. Okay, so we've got 10-meter bolts here on the main connection, here on these two connections, and so forth. And these ended up being 7mm bolts right here for the bracket. So we've got our bolts for the top and bottom. We've got some space to work down there, so let's get busy getting this alternator installed and see if it changes our output current and gets us back where we should be. Okay, so we've disconnected this in the previous video. We haven't reconnected it, so just advice when working on electronic components, or when you're working on any components really on your vehicle, just go ahead and disconnect your battery, just so you don't touch something that that arcs and do further damage. So we've got this disconnected. Let's get to work. Okay, so as we have this off, you can see, I know it's kind of tight in here, but there's 4 connections. This is the main cable, and then this is just the wiring harness here that all goes to the back of the alternator. So if we're getting a little bit tighter there, I am going to take a wire brush and I'm just going to clean all these connections real good, just to get good continuity and have everything making good contact. I mean, it's a 93 model. It's been through a lot, so we're going to get all those cleaned up before we do the install. We'll be back. Okay, we just hit this bracket really good. Okay, so I've got these new bolts on here that came with it from the factory. So I'm going to just remove these, and what I'm going to do is just lay the alternator in its position. I'm just going to lay it on top of the bracket in there, consistent with the way it mounts, and I'm going to put all the connections on there, and I'm going to hand tighten them. So that's 10. This is 7. These for the wiring harness. These are 7mm. So let's get these off. I'm going to just lay it down in this area here before I put it into the actual bracket. I'm just going to lay it in there so I can have it kind of this side up. And with this side up, I can have access to my wiring harness connections and then all the other connections and get that all hooked up. And I'm going to hand tighten it for now. We'll be back. Okay, so I've got it just lying in position in there on top of the bracket, and that'll allow me to manipulate it enough to get everything connected. Okay, I know it's kind of hard to see down there, but we've got all our connections in place, and we've given them just a hand tight with the use a 1/4 inch drive ratchet there I don't want to over tighten and break anything, but now it's ready to mount. So we're going to put it in the bracket and just hand tighten the bolts, and then we'll crank those down. Okay, so we've got this back in. There's a 15 millimeter here, okay, and then there's another one down here underneath. Okay, this one is a bolt and a nut, and the bottom one is just a bolt only that screws into the threaded bracket. So we're going to use a 15 millimeter socket and wrench, and we're going to get those tightened down. So it's a little tight in here, but we'll get it done. Let's get on this first one here. I got an air ratchet. By the time I brought all that out and everything, I'd already have this tight. So anyway, we're going to get this first top one tightened down, and then we'll get down and get on that bottom one. Okay, so we transitioned to the Hi-8 camera to get in here tight. Okay, so there's the top bolt, and I couldn't find a torque spec, so I just got it good and tight. And the bottom bolt's kind of hard to see, but trust me, it's down there. See, there it is, right down in there. A little tight. See if I can get focus on it. But yeah, you can barely see it down there. There's the bottom bolt. Okay, so 15 millimeters, just got them good and tight. Okay, and that's the best we can do. Okay, so there you can see the alternator in its final resting place alongside the engine block, and we're ready to reinstall the fan belt. Okay, this is extremely important here because we got this fan belt off, and we got to make sure we put it back on right. But the last thing to go will be the actual power steering pump. But on the shroud of the fan, there's a map, and we're going to follow that map. Okay, so we've got the fan belt back on. You can see the power steering pump is loose there, so we're going to just snug these bolts up. Now, this has a tensioner on the bottom of it, but like I said, this is a modified bracket, so my tensioner doesn't work. So what I do is I get a pry bar in here, get a little leverage on this thing, and I pull back on it, and then I tighten it down. So for right now, we're going to hand tighten or snug this bolt, the bolts on the back side, and the bolts behind, and give it just enough slack so it'll move, and then we'll move it back into place and snug it up. Okay, so this is where this gets a little bit tough. So I've got to tighten that belt, okay, with this pry bar, and then get enough torque on these bolts to hold it. So I got to push and tighten. Okay, good. I want to try to get a little bit more on that. And if you got a partner to help with this, it makes a difference. Okay, so I got that one. Let me get on the back side here. See if I can get this one tightened down. A little tight in here. All right, good. And then there's the top one here. Just tighten down. Good. Now I got one more on the back side here. It's a T30. I don't really know why. That's just what came out. So I think that's the previous owner's doing there. I may just change that out for a standard bolt because it's kind of hard to get a hex head in there. So anyway, we'll be back in a minute. We'll be ready to fire it up. Okay, now comes the moment of truth. We've got our battery reconnected here. Fan belt's tightened down. Everything appears to be in order. Okay, we're going to run a quick continuity check, and then we're going to crank it up and see if it runs. We'll be back. All right, let's check see how many volts we got here at the battery. 12.7. Now let me get down here to the alternator. All right, 12.7, that's the same. All right, so we've got continuity. The battery's charged. It should start. Let's give it a whirl. All right, vehicle's in neutral. And let's see what this does. Alright, shows I've got good voltage. It's all the way over. 14 volts. Alright, let's go check it on the outside. 14.9. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this 1993 Jeep YJ alternator install. Looks like we've fixed our problem, and we'll just have to be careful to not let this thing idle for extended periods of time with all the lights on. But anyway, hopefully those extra 15 amps going from a 75 to a 90 amp alternator will make a difference. We'll just have to watch it, watch the wiring, make sure that things don't heat up because like I said, we did remove a 75 amp. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Give us some feedback on what you think about these videos. Today filming again with the JVC GY-DV500 DV camcorder from the late 1990s with a little bit of help from the Sony CCD VX-3 on some of those close-ups. So we hope you've enjoyed this 2-camera 3 CCD video shot with the 1990s technologies on our 1993 Jeep Wrangler YJ.